The moderator's shadow. In the dark corners of the internet, there was a Discord server known as the Abyss. It wasn't famous, nor was it particularly large, but it had a reputation. The server's rules were strict, the moderation relentless. The moderators, known only by their usernames, were a mysterious bunch. They never spoke in voice chat, never shared personal details. They just enforced the rules with an iron fist. One night, a new member named Alex joined the server. He was curious about the server's reputation and wanted to see what made it so different. The welcome message was eerily formal, devoid of the usual emojis and friendly greetings. Just a simple code directive. Read the rules. As Alex browsed through the channels, he noticed something odd. There was a locked channel at the bottom of the list called The Pit. No one talked about it, and it was never mentioned in any of the other channels. Intrigued, Alex messaged one of the moderators, a user named Warden, asking what the pit was. Warden's reply was immediate, almost as if he had been waiting for the question. It's where the rule breakers go. Alex laughed it off, assuming it was just a joke or some kind of roleplay element, but as he continued to interact on the server, he started to notice something strange. Members who had been active one day would suddenly disappear the next. Their usernames grayed out. When he asked about them, the moderators would respond with the same message. They broke the rules. Curiosity got the better of him. Late one night, when the server was quiet, Alex decided to test the boundaries. He posted a harmless meme in the wrong channel, expecting maybe a warning or a mute. But within seconds, a notification popped up. You have been moved to the pit. His screen flickered, and he was forcefully moved into the locked channel. The pit was unlike any other channel on the server. It was completely dark, with no text, no users, just a blank void. But Alex wasn't alone. As he stared at the screen, faint whispers began to fill his headset, a chorus of voices that seemed to echo from all directions. The whispers grew louder, more frantic, until he could make out what they were saying. Help us. Panicking, Alex tried to leave the channel, but every time he clicked to another one, he was dragged back to the pit. The whispers became screams, distorted and agonizing, like nails on a chalkboard, mixed with desperate cries for mercy. His computer started to lag, the screen glitching as the voices grew more insistent. And then a message appeared in the pit, typed out by a user with no name. You shouldn't have broken the rules. Suddenly, Alex's screen went black, his entire system shutting down in an instant. He frantically tried to reboot, but when his computer finally powered back on, the Discord app was gone. Not just closed, but completely uninstalled, with no trace of it ever being on his system. Confused and shaken, Alex reinstalled Discord and tried to log back into the server, but the Abyss had vanished from his server list. It was as if it had never existed. He searched for it, asked around, but no one seemed to know what he was talking about. Over the next few days, strange things began to happen. His computer would randomly shut down, files would disappear, and sometimes, in the dead of the night, his headset would pick up those same whispers. Even when his computer was off, the whispers were always the same. Help us. Desperate, Alex contacted Discord support, but they couldn't find any record of the server or the username Warden. They assured him that it was probably just a glitch, but Alex knew better. Something had followed him out of the pit. something that wasn't bound by the rules of the server. The final straw came when he received a package in the mail with no return address. Inside was a single black USB drive. Hesitant but curious, Alex plugged it into his computer. It contained one file, simply named rules.txt. When he opened it, the screen filled with text, repeating the same phrase over and over. "You broke the rules." Before he could react, the screen glitched again, and his computer shut down for the last time. This time, it wouldn't turn back on. As he sat there in the dark, the whispers returned, louder than ever, filling the room with a cacophony of voices, each one screaming for help, screaming in pain, screaming his name. And in that moment, Alex realized the truth. He hadn't just been a visitor to the abyss. He had become part of it. Now his username is grayed out too, lost in the shadows of the server that no longer exists. But every now and then, on a quiet night, a new member might receive a welcome message from Warden, directing them to read the rules. And if they don't, they might find themselves in the pit, where the whispers never stop and the shadows always watch. The Banhammer. In the vast wilderness of the internet, few places were as chaotic and unruly as Reddit. It was a digital jungle where anyone could voice their opinions, share stories, or post memes. But there was one community that stood out among the rest, a subreddit known as the Hall of Judgment. It was a place where users would go to air their grievances, to complain about injustices, and to demand accountability. But what made this subreddit unique wasn't just its content, it was the moderators. The mods of the Hall of Judgment were notorious. They were strict, merciless, and completely anonymous. Their usernames were a string of random letters and numbers, and they never engaged in discussions. They simply enforced the rules with an iron fist. People whispered about them in other subreddits, speculating about who they were and why they were so unforgiving. One day, a user named Mark stumbled upon the subreddit. He had a grievance to share, a story about a corrupt boss who had made his life miserable. He carefully crafted his post, making sure to follow all the rules. He even double-checked the guidelines before hitting submit. For a few hours, the post gained traction. Upvotes poured in, and comments of support flooded the thread. But then, without warning, his post was removed. A message appeared in his inbox. "Your post has been removed for violating Rule 4. No witch hunting." Mark was confused. He had read Rule 4 multiple times and made sure his post didn't target anyone specifically. He appealed the decision, sending a polite message to the mods, asking for clarification. He expected the usual canned response, or perhaps a bit of a snark. Instead, he received a cryptic reply. "The rules are absolute. No exceptions." Frustrated but determined, Mark decided to investigate. He created a new account, one that was completely anonymous, and began to dig deep into the history of the Hall of Judgment. He searched through old posts, reading through deleted threads and archived comments. What he found disturbed him. The subreddit had been created years ago, but the original moderators were long gone. Their accounts had been deleted, with no explanation given. The current mods had taken over suddenly, their first act being to purge thousands of posts and ban hundreds of users. But what struck Mark as truly unsettling were the stories from those who had been banned. Users claimed that after their bans, strange things started happening. Their devices would malfunction, their accounts would be hacked, and in some cases, they reported being stalked by anonymous figures online. These weren't just stories, they were cries for help, buried in the depths of the site, ignored by the broader Reddit community. Mark's curiosity turned into fear, but he couldn't stop himself. He continued digging, finding more and more accounts of strange happenings linked to the subreddit. And then, one night, he received a message from a user with a throwaway account. "They know what you're doing. Stop now, before it's too late." Ignoring the warning, Mark pressed on, determined to expose the truth. But the deeper he went, the more paranoid he became. His computer started acting strange. Random crashes, files disappearing, and messages he hadn't sent showing up in his inbox. One night, while browsing Reddit, his screen suddenly went black. When it came back on, all his tabs were closed, except for one, the Hall of Judgment. A new post had appeared at the top of the subreddit. The title was "Judgment Awaits," and the post contained only one sentence: "We are always watching." Mark's heart raced as he stared at the screen. He tried to log out, but his account was frozen. He tried to close the browser, but his mouse wouldn't respond. The post was the only thing he could see, the only thing he could interact with. And then the post began to change. The text started to shift, morphing into something else. An IP address. His IP address. Below it, a new line of text appeared. "You have been judged." Panicking, Marks pulled the plug on his computer, but it was too late. His phone buzzed with a notification, a message from an unknown user, and simply read, "We're coming." For the next few days, Mark lived in fear. Every knock at the door, every ring of the phone sent shivers down his spine. He stopped going online, deleted his Reddit account, and even considered moving. But the messages didn't stop. They came in the middle of the night, on new devices he hadn't even connected to the internet. And then, one evening, his computer powered on by itself. The screen was black, except for one message: "Your ban is final." The room grew cold, the lights flickered, and Mark felt a presence behind him. He turned slowly, his breath catching in his throat. Standing in the shadows were figures, their faces obscured, their eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. He couldn't move, couldn't scream, as they approached, surrounding him. The last thing Mark saw was his computer screen, the subreddit's logo, burning brightly before everything went dark. In the days that followed, Mark's disappearance was noted by his friends, but no one could find any trace of him. His accounts were wiped clean, his devices missing, his apartment abandoned, as if he had simply vanished. But somewhere deep in the bowels of Reddit, a new post appeared in the Hall of Judgment, posted by one of the mysterious mods. The title read, "Judgment Served," and it quickly climbed to the top of the subreddit before being locked, never to be commented on or voted on again. And those who saw it knew better than to ask questions or dig deeper. They simply scrolled past, knowing that the ban hammer had struck again, and that some rules were better left unbroken. The ban hammer. In a dimly lit room, the glow of a computer monitor was the only source of light. Nathan leaned back in his chair, the familiar hum of his PC providing a false sense of security. As a Twitch moderator for one of the platform's largest streamers, he had seen it all: harassment, trolls, bots, but nothing could have prepared him for what was about to happen. Nathan had been moderating for years, but the sudden influx of viewers in the past month had necessitated some new blood. The streamer, known to the community as Carmilla, had quickly become one of Twitch's top horror content creators. Her streams, mostly involving obscure and unsettling games, drew thousands of viewers nightly. But with popularity came the inevitable: more trolls. Among the new moderators was someone with the username BanItNow. Nathan had noticed the name immediately. Too on the nose, he thought, but he didn't give it much more attention. New mods came and went all the time. "Welcome to the team," Nathan typed in the mod chat. "Thanks, excited to be here," BanItNow replied. "I'll make sure the chat is clean." Nathan didn't think much of it at the time, but something about BanItNow's quick integration felt off. His enthusiasm was almost eerie. The new mod was relentless, banning users for even the slightest infraction. It wasn't long before regulars started complaining, but every time Nathan checked the chat logs, the bans seemed justified, at least technically. One night, while moderating a particularly intense stream, Nathan noticed something odd. The usernames of banned accounts were appearing in the chat, but not as participants. Instead, their names floated like ghosts, gray and muted, followed by a single, chilling message: "You're next." Nathan blinked, unsure if he had really seen it or if his tired mind was playing tricks on him. He reached out to the other mods, but no one seemed to notice anything unusual. Maybe it was just a glitch. But as the night went on, more and more of these ghostly messages began to appear, each one more threatening than the last, and they all came from accounts that had been banned by BanItNow. "Hey, anyone else seeing weird stuff in the chat?" Nathan finally asked in the mod channel. "Just the usual trolls," someone replied. But Nathan wasn't convinced. The messages had started appearing even in private mod channels, places where no banned users should have access to. Something was wrong. The next day, Nathan decided to dig deeper. He pulled up BanItNow's account and checked the logs. The account had only been created a few weeks before joining as a mod, and there was almost no information about the user. No social media links, no previous chat history, nothing. It was as if BanItNow had materialized out of thin air. Nathan reached out to Twitch support, but they were no help. To them, BanItNow was just another user. As the days passed, the situation grew worse. Streams were plagued by eerie glitches, the chat devolving into chaos whenever BanItNow was active. Viewers started to leave in droves, scared off by the increasingly aggressive and bizarre behavior of the mods, or rather, one mod in particular. Then, one night, Nathan received a direct message from BanItNow. "You shouldn't have looked." His heart raced as he stared at the screen. Before he could respond, the lights in his room flickered and his computer screen went black. Nathan woke up to find himself sitting at his desk, but something was different. The room was cold, the kind of cold that seeped into your bones. His computer was on, displaying the Twitch dashboard, but the viewer count was 0, and the chat was empty. "Hello?" Nathan typed, but his message didn't appear. Suddenly, the screen filled with text, scrolling too fast for him to read. He tried to close the window, but the mouse wouldn't move. Panic set in as the text slowed, finally revealing a single line: "You're banned." The screen went black again, but this time it didn't come back on. Nathan's heart pounded in his chest as he reached for his phone, but there was no signal. And then he heard it, a faint whisper coming from his speakers, growing louder and more insistent. It was his own voice, looping the same words over and over. "You're next." Nathan was never seen online again. His accounts vanished, and his name faded into obscurity. But sometimes, in the dark corners of Twitch, in the dead of the night, users would report seeing a strange mod with the username BanItNow lurking in the chat, issuing bans without warning. And if you're unlucky enough to catch a glimpse of those ghostly usernames, just remember, you might be next.